All right, the NFL never stops. We're all over it. Football at 4, powered by InsideTheBirds.com. Geoff Mosher's with us today as we will take a look at a lot of Eagles NFL conversation. As always, during Football at 4, Mike Gill, Hunter Brody, at Broads81, at Mike Gill Show. Give us a follow. And, of course, play along. Ask Mike and Broads coming up in about a half an hour from now. But first, Football at 4 with Geoff Mosher here on the Boardwalk Honda Hotline. Mose, what's up, buddy?
What's up, Mike? How you doing?
I am doing well in the middle of this pandemic, better than I thought I would be making out at this point. But I don't know. Before we get to some Eagles stuff, should we be excited and anticipatory about the potential of having mini camps here in a couple of weeks?
Ooh, that's a tough one to get excited about because I'm afraid that, we're living kind of day by day. I mean, all of us, no matter what profession, no matter what we're doing in our livelihood. And I also feel like there's a lot of uncertainty. We're hoping and we see progress. We see states reopening, sports now in New York. I believe Pennsylvania, though, has not reopened to sports yet. If I'm not mistaken, I haven't heard Governor Tom Wolf say specifically that Pennsylvania is. You can correct me if I'm wrong on that.
I think you're right about that.
Yeah, it does feel like we're inching closer toward what we want, but I look at it like the NBA deal, right, where everything was kind of in an uncertain trajectory. We didn't know what was going on, and then all of a sudden one guy gets it, and everything just completely shuts down, right? So I would caution anybody who says, yes, it's back, we are making progress, it seems, but I feel like any one kind of turn of events could put the genie all back into a lamp, and that would probably be really disappointing and deflating for a lot of people.
Yeah,
so it's like being a Philadelphia fan. You just don't get your hopes up too high, right?
Well, it was interesting because, it seemed that the NFL has so cavalierly just been like, we're not stopping the draft. We're going to play with people in the stadium. We're going to start on time. And for them to kind of suggest that, you know what? We might even have mini camps now. What do you think about that? Like, it just seems like if they're going to come out and, insinuate that, it's that they don't intend to be told they're not going to get it done.
Yeah, the NFL's not dumb, right? So although it may come off as cavalier, and I agree with you, at least very curious, and some people have even said downright arrogant, I don't think they're doing this without at least having a lot of planning going on behind the scenes. And I've already heard Troy Vincent come out and talk about, yes, we are planning for full stadiums in September when the season starts, but he said we are also planning for half-full stadiums, three-quarter full stadiums. So, without having enough information, like I appreciate planning, at least on their part, for every single type of scenario and hoping for the best. I think we're all at a point where we don't look to the NFL to dictate how we live our lives per se. So just because the NFL says we're planning for, a full stadium season doesn't mean I think that the consumers, us, media, anybody, fans, are just like brainwashed into thinking everything's hunky-dory and great. Maybe there's a segment of the population that will, but the NFL is following the leads of the experts. That's what they say. They're talking to health experts all the time. They don't do anything without consulting the experts. So those are the leaders that we're trying to follow at the moment.
All right, Geoff Mosher, Football at 4, powered by InsideTheBirds.com. Jalen Reagor's come up a lot in the last couple of days. Mainly, there was a couple of things. Pro Football Focus ranked the top wide receiver situations for rookies. He was 9th on that list, meaning what situation that player is walking into and how he fits into that offense. I thought that was a little low on that list, being number 9. I think that the Eagles are going to find a lot of different ways to utilize him. So how do you see Jalen Reagor's role basically playing out in Philadelphia? What's the plan for Reagor?
Yeah, I like how you phrase that. What's the plan, right? Because that's kind of the title of the last Inside the Birds podcast with me and Adam Kaplan. And I got some information on this, almost not looking for it. I was more looking into what we were just talking about. What's going on right now with the entire team as it's, fragmented by the shutdown, and how are they getting their studies in and what's going on? I think you and I had the discussion a couple of weeks ago. I was saying that early on, this was a complicated process. You have all people, you're talking about the whole team, the rookie free agents, the draft picks, the fringe, 80, 90 guys, right? And you're all trying to get these guys within their position to talk to their coaches through a Zoom. I'm sure everybody's tried a Zoom and had 10 or 11 people on it, and it can be a cluster, at times. And so there was some difficulty there at the early onset of what would have been spring camps, getting everybody together. That was the feedback I was getting. So I was kind of looking into seeing if that process has improved. And with Jalen specifically, I found out that he's been doing, just like everybody else, the Zoom. They have more Zoom meetings than I thought. It's, they have an 8:31, a 9:31, then there's a break, then there's another one. And with Jalen in particular, he's meeting with, obviously, the wide receivers coach, obviously having a session with the assistant wide receivers coach as well, but also with Doug Peterson and also with Howie Roseman. In fact, either Doug or Howie has been in contact with Jalen at least once a week on Zoom. And what was told to me by someone really close to the situation was that they've articulated that their plan for Jalen is to figure out different ways to get the ball in his hands. He is not going to be a guy that they just line up in one spot and throw the ball to him. I mean, there are plenty of wide receivers who are like that and who are very good. I mean, Deshaun Jackson is one of those guys. He lines up at the Z, and he runs his routes from the Z, and he's very successful doing that with that speed. And when I say Z, I mean, on the right side, split right. Jalen, they would like to play at the X opposite Deshaun Jackson, but they also have plans to put him in the slot to capitalize on his explosion in space. And it was told to me that they've got other plans, creative plans, to get the ball in his hands that we'll have to wait and see. But you know what they did with Nelson Aguilar back, when he was playing well, and they would use him on jet sweeps and wing counters. And, so I think Andrew said it with you yesterday. If you look at the year Deebo Samuel had last year, kind of comparable in that he had 800 receiving yards and I think about 150 to 200 rushing yards. I think that is something that we're looking at with Reagor, at least as far as usage, getting the ball in his hands from the X, from the slot as a running back in jet motion. Remember, they brought in Rich Scangarello, who is a disciple of the Kyle Shanahan system. So a lot of things using disguised motions and misdirections, and just being able to get a guy like Jalen, who has a lot more speed. I don't say a lot more speed, but he's got more speed than Deebo Samuel to get him the ball and get him in space.
InsideTheBirds.com, you start an article off by saying, in many ways, Jalen Reagor reminds me of Jeremy Maclin. What exactly do you see?
Well, I was trying to figure out, the Eagles have had so many different types of wide receivers that they've drafted over the years or signed, like a big physical Alshon or Deshaun, who's 170 pounds, on a good day. And who did Jalen kind of remind me of, not just from a body size, but a situation? And if you look, Jeremy Maclin was a guy coming out of Missouri who had a lot of speed. In fact, most people thought he was going to be a top 5, top 10 pick. But Oakland, I think, that year went with Hayward Bay. And then Jeremy started, slipped a little bit down to the 20s where the Eagles were able to trade up and get him. Jeremy is, I believe, 5'11", 205. Reagor is 5'11", and I know they're trying to have him play at right around 200, so 195 to 200. Jeremy came to the team when things were going well offensively and just about to start to get better. Deshaun had been a rookie the year before and showed what he could do. Brent Selleck was a weapon. Brian Westbrook was a weapon. Shady McCoy was drafted the same year. So the Eagles were really starting to come up offensively, in like kind of the second part of Andy Reid's coaching career there. And if you remember, that team was setting record year after year for points scored during that time frame. And now Jalen enters where you're getting Deshaun Jackson back, ironically, and good quarterback in Carson Wentz, good offensive line, good offensive philosophies, and good offensive coaches. We killed the Eagles last year, Hunter, for scoring lethargy at times, but remember that they were third in red zone and fourth in third down percentage. They were a very good situational offense, and so you put Jalen on the field with Miles Sanders and Goddard and Ertz and Deshaun Jackson, and you recognize there's a lot of playmaking potential there if everyone's healthy. And so I see a lot of similarities of both speed, size, and the situation that they're coming into.
Geoff Mosher's with us, Football at 4, powered by InsideTheBirds.com. What about where the running back situation is now? We saw Hyde get scooped up by Seattle. We saw the offer that Seattle made Freeman, and that would seemingly take him off the Eagles' board. So is a veteran running back still in the mix, or do they just say, you know what, we'll go with what we got?
Well, some of that depends, I think, on whether or not Devontae Freeman kind of wises up and realizes that, his best days, while maybe they're still around, they haven't been proven for a couple of years because he just hasn't stayed healthy. And he needs to realize that we're on the brink of becoming June and he's still unemployed. and most teams now already have their slotted number 1 and number 2 running back. So whatever money he's looking for, if that's the issue, and Adam Kaplan has talked about it, then he's going to eventually either find himself jobless and sitting out the year, or he's going to decide, I want to play football this year for a price that I don't want but works for that team. And so if he lowers his demands, I still think there's an opportunity for the Eagles to bring him in if they want to take that chance, knowing his injury history. They really haven't done that a lot, but they do need they haven't done that a lot this year with who they brought in, but they do obviously have a need for a number 2 running back. So there's that opportunity. But if not him, and it's not LaShawn McCoy, I think what the Eagles would do is say, look, we have candidates. We have Corey Clement. We have Elijah Holyfield. We signed 2 rookie free agents that we like. We have Boston Scott. So, the whole dart throwing thing that we talked about with the draft, where you want to really excel at a certain position like wide receiver or a certain trait like athleticism, and you start drafting numerous types of those players. And, if 2 miss but 2 hit, at least you got 2 functional players. That's the philosophy they take in with running back. If they don't add anybody, we have names, we have guys we like. They're here for a reason, and now here's their opportunity to step into that role. I think Corey Clement, to me, is the one who would benefit the most if he can stay healthy, because he's, a 210-pound running back. He's got that downhill style. You saw what he can do as a rookie when he did stay healthy. He was an incredible story. I think he's probably the most equipped to be a number 2 running back who could be the number 1 running back if Miles Sanders were to get hurt, if he could stay healthy. And that obviously has been an enormous if with him for the last 2 years.
No running back thrives without an offensive line. And I know you just had on Trey Thomas on Inside the Birds TV breaking down Andre Dillard. What was your biggest takeaway from that?
Well, it was a great video, Hunter. Thanks for bringing that up. I hope everybody checks it out on our YouTube channel, Inside the Birds YouTube, because Trey kind of talked about not just Andre Dillard, but the entire Jeff Stoutland coaching philosophy, the rest of the line. He went into slide protections and how they make some calls. So it was really an enlightening conversation with him. He I thought, was very fair with Andre. I thought he pointed out what he felt Andre needed to get better at, and that's hand usage, getting his hands up. An offensive lineman, specifically with the inside and the outside shoulder, that's really important, how you're punching and how you're striking the defensive end come at you, and your stance and getting out of it. He felt that there were areas where Andre Dillard was hurt last year in that regard, just being a rookie and not having that seasoning. But also, as we know, the Eagles trying to play him at right tackle a bunch of times where he's never played before, and how difficult that was for the kid to really pick up. So, but on the other side, he did feel that, his run blocking was better than maybe people give him credit for. And he did say that he deserves the chance to be the starting left tackle in 2020, even knowing the shadow of Jason Peters is still kind of hovering around.
Yeah, that Jason Peters thing's interesting. I came across this, and, Pro Football Focus does what they do, and some people like it, some people don't. But they named Jason Peters the most clutch player at his position, not only at left tackle, in the entire league. In other words, in the fourth quarter of a close game, he's the best player on the field. Still, at 38 years old, he was their best player on the field. And it's like, if he's 38 years old and he's still graded out as the best player, not only at the position, in the league, in the biggest moments, and he wants to play again, how do you say no to that? That's a very tough spot that the Eagles are up against.
Yeah, first of all, that is a really interesting statistic. I don't know how you measure clutchness in an offensive lineman.
Yeah. Well, whatever they do to grade their offensive linemen, I guess they grade them in the fourth quarter of a game that's within a touchdown, and whatever grade comes out in those plays, and he graded out to be the best player. Wow.
Well, that's fascinating. I think that speaks to, Jason Peters and his talent level and what he's been able to do at an age where most guys are on their couch. But does that merit him coming back again? Honestly, there are some guys, Mike, who just, they're going to play at a certain level regardless. But, Michael Jordan played fairly decently for the Wizards when he came back. I think he was an all-star that first year at 38, if I'm not mistaken. And it felt like Michael Jordan could just play till 50 and have some kind of impact on whatever team he was on. But eventually, you have to cut the cord. You've got when you replace a guy like the Eagles have done, you've got to give that guy, Andre Dillard, a shot. So I'm very confused by the Eagles' strategy if they bring back Jason Peters before the start of camp. If they do it after the start of camp, maybe it's because 3 weeks into camp, they watched Andre Dillard and they thought, man, this guy really did not make the jump from 1 to 2. You know, maybe it was the fact that they didn't have the OTAs and everything, but they may feel like we just have to bring in Jason because I'm just not confident in Andre Dillard right now. But if they sign him before camp starts, then I just don't get it. I don't know what's going on.
By the way, Peters allowed 5 pressures in 114 pass blocking snaps in pressure situations, which was the best in football. So when it comes down to it, when they throw the ball late in the game, he gives up the least amount of pressures of any tackle in football last year. So for the people who think, you know, you get mad when he has that one penalty that sticks out, he's blocking the guy in front of him pretty well still, even at this advanced stage. Geoff Mosher, Football at 4, powered by InsideTheBirds.com. Let's, real quick, the linebacker situation here. Are they going to go to camp with what they have here? I know Mark Barron's still out there. He's an interesting guy because he was a safety, and they like those guys who kind of cover and are smaller. Do you anticipate that there will be a veteran player at that position here, or is T.J. Edwards and Nate Gary the two guys that will be at the top of the depth chart when we get to camp?
I do well, you know what? I'm going to say yes and yes. I do anticipate them adding a veteran. I know for a fact that it's not lost on them that when you look at their collection of linebackers, they're mostly young, mostly unproven, you know, very little blue chip talent there. And they know they're not going to get a blue chip talent in free agency, but it's always helpful to have someone who's got some kind of resume in the league. You've seen them do that the last few years, whether it was L.J. Ford or Zach Brown. Or even bringing in Nigel Branham a couple of years ago when they needed a body. So there's an opportunity there, and I do believe they will bring in a veteran. Now, does that veteran make the team? We'll have to find out. I mean, it's not going to be someone who's got like 3 or 4 Pro Bowls under their belt. It's going to be someone who's going to be able to compete and see if they can win a job over some of the younger guys that the Eagles have relied upon. But I'll tell you this, one thing I've found out recently in my homework is that one guy that they really like, and you've talked about him a little bit, Mike, is that Duke Riley. So they really like his athleticism. They really like what he, the fact that he's already been with the team for about a year, so he knows the defense. And I think a lot of people looked at the Jatavis Brown signing and said, that's our guy. Jatavis Brown is going to be, if we're in 3 linebackers, it's going to be, T.J. Edwards and Nate Gary and Jatavis Brown. But I'm going to say Duke Riley will probably get as much of an opportunity as anybody else to be that 3rd linebacker, or maybe even that 2nd linebacker in nickel, because T.J. Edwards really isn't a coverage linebacker. So you're going to have Gary, who's a better coverage linebacker, as we know, than a tackler, and then an open spot for somebody to be the nickel linebacker next to Gary.
You did mention one name, and that was Nigel Branham. And the more and more he goes unsigned, I just wonder if they sign him just for just in case. But it does seem like it's not a high possibility.
I'll tell you, what someone told me from the team, and it's a 0.0% possibility. And now, when someone tells me that, I always say, man, I've heard that before, and there's always that door that you leave open. But the reality is, while Nigel was, a well-liked player and respected, he had a few things go on with the team over the last few years that I think finally made it run its course. I mean, we knew about the Cabana Boy thing in Miami a couple of years ago, and then getting the gun through the airport charge that he had. And then last year, I think it was last year, right? I remember Jeff Maclin reporting on this in the Inquirer where he left the team or didn't show up to a practice, and he said he was sick, but that he didn't notify enough people, and Doug was not happy about that. So to me, that was probably strike 3 out of the 3 things that I mentioned, and I just don't see any opportunity or open door here for Nigel Branham to be an Eagle again.
A couple questions from the Ask ITB mailbag that we will be using throughout the Football at 4 segments for Jeff and Andrew, and tomorrow, by the way, Adam Kaplan will be here. So today, let's throw one your way, Geoff. And these are from listeners of both Ask Inside the Birds, or excuse me, InsideTheBirds.com, Football at 4. And let's go to Jeff McNally's question. He says, do you think the Eagles are in a win now or win in a few years mode?
Yeah, I think that's an interesting question. I feel like we talk about this a lot, but sometimes people have a hard time kind of grasping it in its entirety. The Eagles have never, ever said that they were going to rebuild, and have never said that they don't want to put a product out there that they think won't win a championship. Most NFL teams try to do this. I mean, outside of, say, like the Browns when they were clearly tanking, or the Dolphins. But most NFL teams who are well-run know that, when they've got a good enough quarterback, they're going to try to win it. But there are also times where the roster gets a little old and you need to turn it over, and you need to do it in a way where you're still competitive. So, if you look at the Eagles a couple of years ago, right, they win a Super Bowl and they know that they've got an open door because they still have players like Maclin, and they still have players that had Chris Long at the time, right? They make a trade to bring in Michael Bennett at 32, right? Because the window's open. They're trying to acquire as much talent as possible they can win this year. But you can't do that year after year after year after year, because you had 3 drafts in there where you only had 5 or 6 guys getting taken. So their goal is to win, but they didn't make any kind of moves that are like bringing in a 34-year-old or 32-year-old pass rusher. The oldest guy they probably went out and got was Darius Slay, and I believe he's 29. So they're trying to be competitive, and they signed a Javon Hargrave to a big deal, and they're starting to add, young quality players to the team through the draft and what they did in free agency and trade. But they're also trying to win. And I think if you look at their roster, you could say, you know what, they're the defending NFC East champs. Their roster right now, when healthy, looks better than it did at the end of the year when everybody was banged up. So they should be a team that competes to win the NFC East. And when you're competing to win a division title, you're competing for a Super Bowl. So those things can be done. It's been done by other teams, the Patriots, the Saints. You look throughout the well-run teams in the league, and you're able to compete while you're turning over the roster at the same time.
This Ask ITB question is from Alex Rowe on Twitter, and he says he's a huge Carson fan, but what area does Wentz need to improve on this year? Ball security obviously has to get better, but is that coachable?
I think it is. I think ball security is definitely coachable. It doesn't matter what position you play. You go back to Tiki Barber. He came into the league with fumbling issues, and even though he loves to throw Tom Coughlin under the bus afterward, Tom Coughlin at the time he praised for helping him cure him of those fumbling issues that he had. And I think Carson, I think it can be coached, but it's also on the player to kind of drill it, rep it. It helps if he's not getting hit from behind and doesn't see it coming, but it also helps if you kind of sense that pass rush and get rid of the ball quicker and not try to throw the ball down the field all the time, which is something that we've criticized Carson for in the past. But I'll bring up a player, and it's funny because Brian Westbrook was just on social media talking about it. Shady McCoy has always held the football like a loaf of bread in the open field, and you would think he'd probably fumble every third time that he carried the ball the way he does it. He doesn't. He doesn't fumble a whole lot. Brian Westbrook joked about how he's trying to teach him how to secure it high and tight, and Shady basically ignored him and has had a Hall of Fame career holding the football that way. He can get away with it. I don't think Carson has. The record says it himself. He was at a point where he was averaging like a turnover a game on fumbles. So he definitely obviously has to work on that, but it does help when you're not getting hit from all different directions too.
Football 4, powered by InsideTheBirds.com. Geoff Mosher is with us today, and he will be back on Monday's show. Tomorrow, it is Adam Kaplan in the Football at 4 hot seat, and Andrew DeCecco is back on Friday. And, of course, you can check out all their stuff at InsideTheBirds.com, and every day at 4 o'clock right here during Football at 4. All right, Mosher, we'll talk again on Monday.
Sounds good, guys. Have a good one.
All right, Geoff Mosher, like all guests, appear to be the Boardwalk Honda Hotline. Football at 4 in the books for today.